into executive session for the purposes of evaluating the superintendent, and now we're going to reconvene back into regular session. And at this time, I would like to welcome Sarah Devers, our Assistant Treasurer, to the meeting this evening. And we promise to be patient. This is her first time working with board docs, so we'll ask you to please call the roll formally now that we're back in public session.
Mr. Luby?
Here.
Mr. Gregerson?
Here.
Mr. Height?
Here.
Mr. Patrizio?
Here.
And Mrs. Webster?
I'm here, and if you'll please rise and join me in reciting the I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As is our custom, at the beginning of each meeting, I will read the mission statement, remind us why we're all here. The students, parents, staff, and community of the Piqua City School District accept the responsibility to provide our students with the best possible opportunities for the intellectual, moral, and physical development necessary to become responsible citizens. Moving on to agenda item approval of minutes. We have minutes. You've had the opportunity to review the minutes from the November 19th regular meeting and the December 1st special meeting. At this time, are there any corrections or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and that motion will carry by unanimous consent. Next item is the approval of this evening's agenda. Are there any amendments?
We do have one amendment under superintendent's agenda. There is a new H3 that is on board docs. As of today, Brandon Lytle, our Science Olympiad coach at the high school, found out about the tournament that they go to every year in Indianapolis, and so that has been added to the agenda. And so that is the new H3, which means H4 is the vote.
Thank you. Hearing no other changes, I'll also entertain then a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. No further discussion, then this item also, Mrs. Devers, will pass via unanimous consent. Moving on to board reports this evening. Mr. Patrizio, do you have a legislative report for us?
Well, very little, and it actually has to go with the federal government passed a law, and I believe it was signed to change the No Child Left Behind law. It's supposed to limit the federal government's role in basically evaluating schools. However, it did leave yearly testing in place, and one of the goals was to place more of the responsibility back onto the local school boards and state legislature. How, I don't know exactly, but that was the gist of the law. Locally, at the state level, there's really nothing that really is all that significant that was introduced this month.
Thank you. Mr. Haynes, anything to add?
Just the replacement is called Every Student Succeeds Act, and it is well over 1,000 pages, and so we're working with the associations and also legal to find out exactly what is in the bill. And as Mr. Patrizio said, we appreciate, from what we're hearing, it's supposed to be returning some of the control back to the states and to the local districts, which we appreciate.
Thank you. Moving on to the Upper Valley Career Center report. I understand it'll be short. Mr. Height informed me that the meeting was 29 minutes long, and I've been challenged to keep this evening's at that time limit as well.
I'll read fast.
Okay.
The Board of Education of the Upper Valley Career Center met on Tuesday, December 8th, and prior to the meeting, we were treated to a full-course dinner prepared by the students in the culinary program. It was outstanding, too. They did a great job. During the meeting, various people were hired and retirement resignations were accepted. A supplemental contract was given to newly hired treasurer Anthony Fraley for his transition into the job. He will be paid 40 hours between November 24th and December 31st. And it was also noted that this was Paul Carpenter's final meeting as treasurer of the Upper Valley Career Center. He's moving on to another position. Dr. Luce reviewed the two revisions which deal with school bus safety and drug testing for district personnel. The drug testing deals with employees who are required to hold a commercial driver's license. And the revision clarifies that both federal and state laws are to be followed. And the revision with the school bus safety program states that someone other than the driver is to supervise evacuation drills, and that the drills must be held annually. Also, as mentioned, a holiday reception will be held on Monday, December 21st in the Stickley Dining Commons. Career Day and open house went well. At the open house, 296 students completed applications for 2016, and the current number of applications for the Upper Valley Career Center is at 408, which is 100 more than it was in 2014. So great amount of interest in students wanting to attend there, and that's understandable. They have great programs there. Also approved a purchase order for the purchase of a multi-purpose vehicle from Cardinal Bus Sales. I think it's the same one we were looking at, yeah.
Yes.
So we had a firsthand jump start on that. We had seen it in Columbus, and they had actually brought the bus over to the Career Center for the other board members to see. So it's very effective. Approve 2016 board meeting dates, and also approve membership in the Ohio School Board Association and the Ohio School Board Legal Assistance Fund. And the next meeting will be Tuesday, January 12th at 6 p.m. I know I exceeded that a minute and a half, but I'm sorry.
You did read fast, though. Thank
right.
you. Moving on to item D in the agenda, celebration. This evening we have, as we're here in Piqua High School, we are anxious to hear more about the algebra block that Mr. Lyons has shared with us previously. Mr. Haynes, would you like to?
We'll just bring Mr. Lyons
Okay.
and all of the participants up.
Great.
No, I can't.
Thank you. Good evening. And Laura, you mentioned that you've heard about much information already about the algebra block, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but I would like to start off with just introducing our instructors that we have here this evening. Jean Koth, who just stood up, is one of our algebra teachers. In fact, she's new to the district this year. And Kim Dyer is our intervention specialist, both of whom work with the algebra block. And we're missing Kevin Gresham this evening because he did, in fact, have a basketball game that's going on just down the hall. So, but the one thing I will spend just a minute on is the amount of time and effort and energy that those three have put into the algebra block from its inception to now. I mean, if you want to find Jean Koth, probably if her husband wants to find her, he has to come here to see her. Right, the poor guy. And it's a lot of collaborative work together. I mean, we can't get them to leave to do other things because they want to be here working with each other to prepare for their kids. It's an amazing model, and we've seen a lot of growth in the program, just in casual observations. Another thank you goes to Mr. Messick, because as an assistant principal, he really did the groundwork as we began thoughts of a program like this, and then working with the teachers continuously throughout the school year. Again, you all know the statistics that come along with Algebra 1 related to ACT, high school success and college success, so there's no more for me to say other than thank you all. We have a great group of young people here that they're going to introduce as well. So, ladies, it's yours.
Hi, my name is Kim Dyer. I'm an intervention specialist here at Piqua High School, and this is my third year here at Piqua High School. The Algebra 1 block is a freshman-only algebra class, and it's for students that are taking Algebra 1 for the first time. And it is 16 units of algebra skills that we work on every day, and each student in the algebra block has a chance to earn 2 math credits for the course, depending on how many of the units that they get through during the day, or during the year. And there are 15 students in each of the 2 classes, and both blocks have 30 kids in each. There's 60 total kids in the block right now. There's 3 teachers, 2 general ed Algebra 1 teachers, and myself, the intervention specialist. And the students are assigned to one of the Algebra 1 teachers for attendance and grading purposes only But they're based on what they're working on for the particular day. They could be with any of the 3 teachers. Each day, the students come in, and we pass back any papers that they've completed. We show them their quizzes and tests from the previous day, and we give them an agenda. And the agenda is based on the skill that they're working on or the lesson that they're working on. And we stick the students in groups, and we give them a leader for that group. And Mrs. Koth has some sample agendas that she'll pass around to show you how that works.
Yeah, this is our full teacher script for the class period. It has all of the different team agendas on it. So the
And we-
different groups of students are.
Yep. And we do cut those into the groups, and we hand them to the group leader for that day, and they gather the students in their group, and they gather the materials, and they tell the group where they're going to be, whether it's in Mrs. Koth's room, Mr. Greship's room, or I have a small room that I work in upstairs also. So we have 3 different rooms right next to each other that the students could be in. And the activities on their agenda could be anything from a worksheet, guided notes, videos, making flashcards. It could be working on IXL.com, which is a program that works on different algebra skills, and if they get the skill correct or the question correct, they move on. If they didn't get it correct, the computer program shows them what they did wrong, and it gives them more practice problems. So it can be a variety of things that they're going to do for the day. At the last 10 minutes of the period, which is, it's an 84-minute block, so at the end of the last 10 minutes, they go back to their home classroom and take a quiz. Some days, they're working on a unit review, or they're working on a lesson that may take 2 days, but most of the time, they go back for that quiz at the last 10 minutes. And the quizzes are 10 points each, and they have to receive an 8 out of 10 on the quiz to pass. If they pass, they go on to the next lesson, and each unit contains 3 to 5 lessons. And if they don't pass it, then the next day they would work on completing a quiz corrections paper where they decide why they missed the problem and rework the problem. And then they work on some remediation of skills, whether it be more worksheets, more teacher instruction, or whatever they may need. And they get 3 attempts to pass each quiz to get an 8 out of 10 before they're moved on to the next lesson. At the end of each unit, the students take an assessment, or an end-of-unit assessment, and it contains questions like the ones they've had on each quiz for that unit, unit review questions from other units. So if they're in Unit 4, they may have questions from Unit 1 or 2 on their Unit 4 assessment. So there's continuation of skills. And they have to receive a 75% or higher to go on their unit assessments. And once again, you get 3 attempts for that also. If they don't pass their test, it's the same thing as a quiz. You would do remediation, you would do test corrections, and figure out what you need to do to be able to pass that unit. The units of study for our block are hung in both classrooms on the wall. So they've got a description of the unit and the lessons that are going to be in that unit on the wall. And then the students at the beginning of the year created a card, and they put a nickname or a picture on the front and their name on the back for anonymity purposes. And the cards at the beginning of the year were all on Unit 1. And as soon as they passed through Unit 1, they got to move their card. So they have a visual of their progress. And now Mrs. Koth is going to talk about the benefits of our block.
There are a lot of benefits that we have seen from our students so far this year. We're almost halfway through the school year. Just after the first month alone, we were seeing a huge increase in the amount of attention that we received from the students while they were learning. There's a huge problem in high school right now where students will write down the notes that they need to write down. Sometimes they do their homework, sometimes they don't, but it doesn't really matter until the day before the test, and that's when they really need to have it figured out. And in math, that's one of the most unsuccessful strategies you could try to use. It's not going to work out, but a lot of our students came into the block with that mentality. It didn't matter if you learned it the first time, as long as you had your notes, you could figure it out later. But because they have to immediately turn around and take a 5-question quiz to determine whether or not they really have the knowledge that they should have, they have to pay attention the first time, or they have to fix it the next day. Nobody wants to fix their lesson the next day, right? Nobody enjoys that. So if you pay attention the first time You work hard like you should the first time, then you get to move on to the lesson the next day. So almost immediately we saw a really nice change in their mentality in that way. We also saw them start to become less focused on the answers and more focused on the process itself, more focused on the learning that got them to those answers. So often students are so fixated on whether or not they have the correct answer written on the line. But if you're doing an 8-step problem and you have the number 4 written on the line and that's correct, kudos to you, you got the right answer. But if they don't know how they got there, that 4 doesn't mean anything. So what we've done a lot, what we've been able to do is give them the answer keys for the worksheets that they're working on. And then they check their progress as they go to see whether or not they got the answers right. Some of them were still trying to shake the fact that the answers aren't necessarily the most important thing, but for a lot of them, that shift in focus has been really good, that they've paid more attention to their learning. They also have started to help each other out more in class, because when there are, you saw on your agendas, those of you that looked through it, and tomorrow's one, the one that was mine that was passed around, it's highlighted, yesterday had 21 teams in first period. 21 teams means 21 lessons happening in the same classroom at the same time. That's very, very difficult for us to manage if everybody needs all of us at the same time, because I can't be in that many places at once. So we had to train them to help each other and to be more dependent on each other and to be more patient waiting for us. So now moving forward, as they move out of the block, that's a skill hopefully that they'll carry with them. If somebody next to them is struggling, it's not a big deal at all for them to just lean over and help their neighbor out, which before this class really didn't happen very much. We also have a lot of flexibility inside of our class schedule, because if a student, I want to give a math example, I'm not sure that you'll understand. If there's a particular lesson in Unit 4 that they really don't understand, then they have to fix that lesson, which is good, because if that's one of the most important lessons they've learned all year and they don't master it, then when they move forward, they're not going to be successful in the next unit. That's the way math works. You can't understand Unit 5 without understanding Unit 4. If a student in their life is going through a really rough spot during Unit 4, they don't understand Unit 4, that could mess them up for the entire rest of the school year. The flexibility in our class schedule allows them to slow down during that time, or maybe it's just a difficult lesson for them to understand. But it allows them to slow down during that time to really make sure that they master those fundamental blocks that they have. We also had a lot of time at the beginning of the school year where students just didn't understand numbers. They didn't know how to multiply numbers together. Those basic number skills that you should have in math, especially when you go into high school, some of them didn't have. And at the beginning of the year, the first 3 units didn't even have any variables in them. The first 3 units were all numbers. So the students who had the number skills they needed flew through those units with no problems. But the students that didn't have that background they needed were really forced to shake that stuff out before they got to the variables. So now what we're seeing is a lot of students starting to pick up the pace because we filled in the gaps that they had coming in. We're not on an equal playing field by any means. Our highest students are at the end of Unit 9, and our lowest students are at the beginning of Unit 5. There's quite a spread halfway through the school year, but we are starting to see things even out a little bit more because we've evened the playing field from where they came from, which is good. I would like to invite our students to come up now, one by one. They're going to talk to you guys a little bit about what their favorite part of the block is or why they like it more than a regular math class. These are students who, in particular, we have seen improvement in from the beginning of the year, or students who have really taken advantage of this situation. So I'm going to have all of them take a deep breath, rise, and come up here and talk to you about what their favorite part is. Start by saying your name.
I'm Gabriel Gilmore, and I like the block better because I get to work at my own pace, but when you're in the regular math class, you have to work together, And if you do a test or anything in a regular math class and you fail it, you have to keep moving on. Even if you don't understand it, you have to keep moving on with all the other kids. But when you're in the algebra block and you fail the test, you can do that lesson again and you can understand it more and take the test again so you can understand it more.
Thank you, Ben.
Just put it back down.
Peyton, Jack. Yeah. Say your name.
Hi, I'm Peyton, and what I like the most about this block program is the feeling of being able to win so easily. You know, it's that feeling of moving on. And I'm very competitive, so when I get the chance to win something or just, just go ahead, it feels greater knowing that I can so easily than having to wait till the end of the year to get that victory feeling.
Something that a lot of our students experience is that when they pass a quiz, they get a much higher feeling of success because it means something if they pass. In a regular class, if they pass or if they fail, there's no different outcome. They're still going to move on regardless. So they get a much higher sense of achievement if they do pass something. I heard a student talk in one of my classes the other period, sixth period, outside of math class, talk about a 60% they had gotten on a science test, which was just not acceptable to them anymore. It's a D, which previous to this year probably would have been acceptable for that student, but we've created this stigma that nothing is okay below an 80%. Nothing is okay below a B. You can't move forward. And that started to carry through in their other classes, which is awesome.
Okay. I know, I was just saying for work. Okay, my name is Jack. I chose the algebra block myself because during mostly 8th grade, I felt like with all of a short time between regular class period, I felt I could never get my math work done. And I do like the algebra block better because it does let you get to work in a group if you're all together. And if you really need help, you can help other people. But if you're by yourself, it helps you learn it better yourself. Like you can learn it a bit more because you don't have to always be helping people. It is nice to help people, but I prefer just working by myself because I feel like I do improve a lot better in my math. Because I've been getting like C's and low B's from last year, but I've been getting A's and B's this year.
Congratulations. Jack is one of our higher students in our first period algebra block, and he a lot of times gets to take advantage of the fact that he can move forward at his own pace. Sometimes Jack gets a little frustrated waiting for people who don't get it as fast as he does, so he likes to take advantage of the fact that he can move forward at his own pace, which has helped put him ahead of a lot of our other students. Thanks, Trent.
My name is Trenton Foster. I like the algebra block because I can work at my own pace. And if I don't get it one day, I can have another day to do it. And I like just doing it with other people instead of having the teacher talk to us in front of the class. We can understand it better when we have one-on-one with the teacher.
Thank you.
My name is Bree, and I like the algebra block because it like everybody else has said, it helps you work at your own pace, and you don't have to move on if you don't know something, and so if you're struggling with something, you don't have to move on with all the other kids that know the stuff. You can do it by yourself, and the teachers are really hands-on and stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you.
My name is Michaela, and I like the algebra block better because it helps me understand math at my own pace.
Michaela has also taken advantage of the fact that because students move through lessons individually, she gets to do a lot of lessons outside of class time. She's in my 6th period advisory class. So sometimes when she's in my advisory class, which isn't even the math class, if she doesn't have other homework to do, She does the next day's math lesson because she can. She goes individually because the whole class doesn't move as a whole. She did one of those yesterday, 6th period, did an additional lesson. This afternoon, she waited in my classroom with me for the meeting to start, and she completed another lesson this afternoon. She's done 4 lessons in the last 2 days, which couldn't happen in a normal classroom. That's something that she's taken advantage of a lot.
Awesome.
My name's Austin. I like the algebra block program because I can learn at my own pace, and if I don't get it, I can go back another day and relearn it if it's hard. But I've been able to go on a roll and pass a few quizzes, and it's funner to do instead of just sitting in a normal classroom and having a teacher talk to you. You can work with friends and be able to learn faster.
One more thing to add. Austin Stewart, lately, when he just said that he's been on a roll for a couple quizzes. Let me elaborate on that. Until today, I'm sorry, Austin, you got 7.5 out of 10. Until today. You need an 8. Until today, he had not failed a single quiz in almost 3 weeks. Not a single one. Test, unit test, quiz, not failed a single one. At the beginning of the school year, Austin was one of those students that was lacking a lot of basic math skills. And in a normal classroom, I can't assume, I can't pass judgment, but I'm not sure if he would have succeeded the way that he is now because he would have started the class year behind. But because we were able to give him the time at the beginning of the school year to figure out all of those pieces that he was missing, now he literally is flying through everything that's happening. Now he's in the top third of the class. At the beginning of the year, he was definitely towards the bottom. That flexibility does not exist in a normal math classroom. I don't have anything else to add. Do you guys have any questions for us about anything that's happening? Okay.
What grade did a lot of you guys start to lose interest in school and math?
7th grade math was not? Okay. When did math start to become hard? When did it start to become boring? You didn't like it anymore? 4th grade. I heard a lot of 7th and 8th grade. So I think what I've gotten from a lot of our students, 3/4 of our students, we gave them a survey last week about how they thought this block had started to help them. A lot of them have started to say that they enjoy math again. Is that true? I don't want to speak for you.
And they weren't
Yeah.
confident. They said, I'm not confident in my math skills. And now they're starting to say.
They're regaining confidence again. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else?
Just whatever you're doing seems like it's working, so keep it up.
Yes, next year. I keep thinking about next year because this year, I'm sorry, guys, we messed so many things up because we don't know how to do this. We've never done this program before.
We've
But
created
next
everything
year,
from scratch.
yes.
You know, the quizzes, all the assessments, everything. So
Next year, at the beginning of the year, we're going to be good to go. It took us a month and a half to come up with team agendas, and until then, things were a madhouse because we were trying to post all of the agendas on the board, and no one knew who they were supposed to be with, and things like that, things that we've worked out along the way, we'll be able to start next school year with, which I'm excited about.
Now, is this something to be translated into other math classes now? It's worked well here?
Theoretically, yes. The downfall of that is, one, that it's an incredible time commitment to develop a class like this. There really aren't very many classes out there that exist like this. So we fortunately had a sample curriculum to pull from another high school somewhere across the state. I don't even remember what the name was. Do you remember the name of the high school we pulled that from?
I don't remember exactly where.
We found one sample curriculum that one other block program somewhere had used, but then we ended up adapting it because we didn't really like the way it was anyway. Otherwise, everything else, we've had to formulate all the ideas, came from scratch. I am married with no children, so I don't like to stay at school until 9 o'clock. I don't enjoy that, but I'm able to because I don't have children waiting on me at home. Kevin, my coworker, is not married either. He is not married. I am married. He does not have children. I'm sorry, I'm freshly married. It's a new thing for me. I still forget sometimes. He doesn't have children either. So if he stays at school until 10 o'clock, he doesn't have children waiting on him. And we can't force that on all of the teachers. Also, it takes a very particular brand of teacher to manage that environment. A lot of teachers would not be okay with that environment. They would need to have more control. They would not be okay with letting students take the reins. And fortunately, you guys did a good job picking the right 3 teachers to put together, because the 3 of us work really well together. And I can't say that every teacher could handle that. In a perfect hypothetical world, yes, from what I've seen, I would love for all math classes to go this way. But
So where do
there
these
are
guys go
restrictions.
next year?
want it too.
Yeah, they asked us this afternoon if they could do Algebra 2 in a block program.
That's a great question. That's what he just asked.
I'm hoping at this point, we don't know what's going to happen until we get through a full school year and see how this thing shakes out all the way through the year. We're hoping that the skills they've gained this year will fill in enough gaps that they will again be able to succeed in a regular setting, but we don't know that for sure because we're just starting this program. We don't know what's going to happen. We would like for that to happen.
Success and excitement for math can change a lot for a lot of people too, though. You may not be able to build exactly the same block, or maybe you don't even need it, but you heard the kids say, I needed this. I can't have somebody move past me if I'm not ready to be moved on. I had a young man in my office who shall remain nameless the other day, just chatting, he and I. And I said, I'm sorry, I know I'm upset with you right now, and I want to get you back to class. And he said, don't worry, I've already finished my modules, so I'm good to go. I have no time for you.
He's already done with his lesson for the day.
So I think that can change the game for a lot of people, though, seeing that success and hearing these kind of stories. And we're excited to see the progress and how the data kind of rolls out from these folks, too. And she said chaos. I'll tell you what, I'm the only one that doesn't know what's going on when I walk in. They all do. And that's because they've gotten themselves, I mean, there's a teacher up in the corner teaching 3 kids. There are 3 kids leaned all together with their heads together talking about these problems. There are 3 or 4 more over on computers, and it all makes sense to them. And that's the key. And outstanding job by these 2, Mr. Messick back there, and obviously Kevin Grisha. Great group of kids.
Question, if the students are telling us 7th and 8th grade is where the difficulty and lack of interest is coming, is this a program that perhaps needs to also happen at the junior high until the new math program filters up this high in the grade levels?
It's funny
Messick?
you say-
I can go
ask
in and
that
kind
question.
of
Sure.
Mr.
All
Messick.
right, thank you, by the way, it was amazing.
It was a great,
A great presentation.
yes it was.
We're taking a look at it. One of the biggest things that we're finding is, and it works really well, with math, is time and the instructional model that they have. So we have to figure out ways that we can look at, how can we get this amount of time for them to be able to do all the differentiation that's going on in there. As they've said, in a regular 40-minute class period, it's kind of tough. So we've been talking to some of the other principals about this. Actually, today we had a math meeting. This was actually a big topic. Most of the other teachers want to come in and take a look at this, follow it around for a whole block time,
Anytime.
just to see how this model works. It's extremely intriguing, but I guess she's not giving it justice. I'm on their email list, so I think they forget about that I'm involved in their emails and they're going back and forth. 11 o'clock at night, they're emailing each other back and forth. I've told them you need to take time. They will not get out of the classroom. They're afraid to leave the classroom. It's flat out amazing. We have amazing people doing this. And yes, it is something we would love to try to push other directions. We just have to figure out how we can make that work.
Okay. Very nice presentation, very informational, and to the students, thank you so very much for coming and sharing. I know it's nerve-wracking to come before a bunch of adults and talk about your schoolwork and your learning, but thank you so very much, and you did a great job, all of you. Thank you.
Under celebration, I had one other thing that I forgot to mention.
Well, I was going to let them go home and work on their math.
Definitely.
homework. You're not, we don't want
Thank
to
you.
keep you here for the rest of our business meeting. And again, thank you so very much, and you should all be proud of the job you did speaking before us this evening.
Our other item under celebration, this is Mrs. Webster's last school board meeting, and the four of the board members put together a ceremonial resolution honoring you. And I'd
Thanks,
like to
guys.
read that at this time. It's CR 07-15. Whereas the Piqua City School District is governed by their Board of Education, elected by the citizens of the Piqua City School District to be legally responsible for the education of the children of the district. Whereas the Piqua City School District is proud to recognize Board of Education member Lori Webster. Whereas Lori Webster has demonstrated a commitment to excellence by serving on this Board of Education for 13 years. Whereas the Piqua City School District recognizes her extraordinary example of service, high expectations, hard work, self-motivation, and effort on behalf of the children of the district. Be it resolved that the Piqua City School District honors Lori Webster and recognizes this commitment to excellence. This resolution is adopted today by your peers.
Thank you,
And a
guys.
huge thank you.
Absolutely.
Lori has served as president several times.
Several times.
And also has served on the audit committee throughout her entire tenure, has also served on the executive advisory board for many years, and has done a tremendous job helping with the financial, but also has asked those good questions about, is this good for children? And part of this resolution is talking about your legal responsibility of the education of the children of our district, and you have been phenomenal. So a huge thank you on behalf, and a small token based upon advice from your husband.
Oh, no.
So just a huge thank you, and if we could give her a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
If you would like to shake hands, that would be great. And
Sure.
traditional.
absolutely, thanks, Frank. As you guys know, this is not something that we do alone, it's as a team. Thanks, Frank. Steve. Thanks. Bob. I have to say, this meeting is a lot different and more friendly than our first meeting together, thankfully. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. Well, sure, we have to have a hug, Sarah. Thank you.
Lori did not want that done.
No.
That's why it was not on the agenda. But we do appreciate everything
Well,
you've done. 13 years is a long time to serve on a Board of Education, and we appreciate your efforts and
Well,
your
thank
time
you.
and commitment.
I thought that at the end of 9 was time, but wanted to see the building project through, and it was quite a bit of effort on everyone's part, and it certainly takes a team and actually the whole community to educate our kids. And I attended a school board meeting when my oldest daughter was in maybe elementary or junior high at Piqua Central. That's how long ago. And I thought, someday I'm going to be able to I want to be able to help do that. And so able to do that as my youngest child was in school, and now my grandchildren are in school, and I'm ready to help volunteer with field trips with them. So still be around, maybe just in a little bit different capacity. It's been a really good 13 years, and I thank the administration for all of their hard work and support, and definitely all the teachers. I've seen a lot of changes in the district, and I think they're all for the positive. We still have a ways to go on our academic scorecard, but I have full confidence in the remaining board members and the new board member coming on, Mr. Bostic, that will continue to move forward and make things even better. Can't thank everyone enough for all that they do. I wish the public knew how hard all the teachers work. Tonight was a super example, and the administrators, those teachers aren't the only ones emailing at 11 o'clock at night. So it's been a privilege and an honor, and thank you. Let's move on. I don't have any requests for the public for hearing of the public on agenda items. We've had the financial reports. Although Mr. Hiddle isn't here this evening, we were provided with those earlier this month, late last week. Are there any questions on those reports? Then we'll go ahead and vote on those. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Mrs. Devers, would you like to call the roll, please?
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio?
Aye.
Mr. Luby?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye. We'll move on now to the superintendent's report. Mr. Haynes?
Item number 1, student achievement update. With the last board meeting focused on student achievement, just a short update. Mr. Thompson is going to share. We have had some testing going on in the district, and he was going to share with that. We have 2 tests that took place this past week.
We talked a little bit about how the secondary level at the high school, they were doing some retakes based on the test that they took last year. So those students completed those tests. Teachers reported that everything went well with technology as well as the testing process. At the elementary level, we had the 3rd grade test. Typically, that took place in October. This year, with the new test being developed, it happened in December. So Spring Creek did really well, no problems with technology. Washington finished theirs. We did have some issues with technology. It was not on our end. It happened through the Ohio Air process. Our technology department and curriculum, as well as Dave, were there the second day, followed up and made sure that everything went pretty seamless. Eric's team went there the night before and worked pretty diligently on making sure students were able to get through the test with no problems. Some of the problems that existed were some students were able to type their responses, other students were not. They were able to get the cursor in the box and they were hitting the keys, but nothing would type in the messages. Students had to log out, the test got saved, they had to log back in, which of course is a distraction. The other thing was the test locked up on several students. So again, they had to shut the computer down, bring it back up. In each incident, what they had done had been saved, but just caused some interruptions. So teachers felt at the 3rd grade level that the reading piece was pretty good. The writing part they were concerned about in terms of the difficulty of it. So already started working with some principals in terms of what we're going to do with some professional development and how we're going to work with students on answering those types of questions so that they'll be ready for that test in the spring. Any questions?
Is the writing part a new component?
It is, yeah. And it's not, the standards no longer ask students to just make up a story. You know, talk about being in a snowstorm. There's nothing like that. It's all in response to a text. So they have to read text, multiple text. Sometimes they have to watch a video as well as read text, do a lot of inferencing, and put their thoughts together using and citing pieces from each one of the sources. Some of the teachers felt that some of the students struggled with the stamina to get through 3 reading selections before they actually got to answer a question. Students are used to reading something, going back, finding the response within that text, and then moving on to the next reading selection. In this case, they had to do a lot of reading, a lot of processing and inferring, and then start answering their questions. So that's how they're going to shift some of their instruction right now to build some of that stamina with their students.
Do the students have the opportunity to take notes then if they have 3 different reading blocks?
It's odd. If it were paper pencil, yes, they could do that on the
Right.
test. They could highlight.
Highlight, underline?
You can highlight on the online test too, but what makes it odd is, you know, when you have a text in front of you, you can flick a page back and forth,
Sure.
or you can see the whole piece. This is a window with a scroll bar. So students have to scroll up and down to see the text. And then there's a feature that they can click on to do some highlighting right on. But if they've highlighted something at the beginning and scroll down, it goes out of sight. So that's another piece that teachers want to work on are the accessibility tools, but they've only released 8 practice questions. So you can only practice those 8 questions so many times before it becomes redundant and not interesting to a student. So trying to get students to learn how to use those features as well as building the stamina for reading.
Wayne, do we have a choice of the type of test, paper versus using technology?
We do at this time, yes. The state indicated last year that they wanted everybody to move to that direction where everybody was going to be online. So the idea was everybody was going to do that, but some districts could not afford it or didn't have the technology in place. but that was not realized. There are a lot of districts that don't have the technology, so they've left that paper pencil option open.
How close are we to them requiring that we use the technology?
They've kind of backed off in terms of, it was going to be 2 years when they started it. I've not seen any statement that they're requiring that now.
Are we going to continue to use technology, or are we going to consider going to the paper pencil?
We are having that conversation. We just, at the conclusion, Mr. Messick and I, as well as Dave and the principals, we all met and kind of had a debriefing session after the last assessment was given and just talked about all the roadblocks, all the pieces that were there, and we kind of threw it out there. What would be the difference between paper pencil versus online? So haven't come to a conclusion yet, but we had really, really good open conversation about the difference between the two, even to the point where they've released questions from the state, what the assessment looked like. They released the questions that were on the online test versus the paper pencil test, and there's a difference. There's a real difference in the kinds of questions that are being asked. So we're taking all that into consideration.
We're also checking just in our area how many districts are doing online versus paper pencil, because we want to make sure that the test is supposed to be testing for reading and for writing. It's not supposed to be testing for use of technology. And we want to make sure that our students are being tested on reading and writing, and technology is not a hindrance. It's supposed to be helpful. So they have been looking carefully, and right now we are still determining what we're going to do in the springtime. Any other questions for Dwayne?
Thank you.
Item number 2, yesterday we had the opportunity to go to Columbus with several people in our district. Ian Westerheide, who is a kindergarten student at Washington. You ready for this, folks? Presented to the state superintendent, presented to the interim state superintendent. He presented to several legislators, and he presented to the controlling board of the state aid fund. If you look at the pictures up there, this is in the boardroom where we were practicing. To the far right is Brad. He is a kindergarten student from Milton Union. His teacher is with him. And then you see Ian and Eric, if you want to put the arrow on Ian. And then Teresa Anderson and myself, we were all there. And for the presentation, Brad actually was controlling his laptop, which is part of his Reach device that all of you have seen. And you can barely see the screen on the wall on the left-hand side, but he was putting it up on the wall and showing them his favorite modules in the Reach PBS learning media modules that our team together with Milton Union and PBS did. They were the stars. Jenny Rammel, the superintendent of Milton, and myself also presented to the state board. We were supposed to be there for 10 minutes. We didn't get our presentation finished because of the fact that we ended up staying about a half an hour, and the state board and the state superintendent were asking many, many questions. They like our project. They love the fact that we are leaving an artifact behind with PBS that is now being used nationally. School districts in Colorado and also across the state of Ohio are starting to look at what's happening here in Piqua and Milton and Franklin Monroe. And so a fun day yesterday, and like I said, Ian was a star, represented Washington, and it's amazing to watch a kindergarten student do what he did with the state board. And he had them in the palm of their hands, his hand showing his skills and what he could do with reading. So an enjoyable day. To go along with that, we did finish our application and have submitted another round for straight A. It's over $800,000. If you remember, Dwayne helped write the first grant that we received that was over $200,000, and then Milton Union was the lead on the last straight A grant that we just presented yesterday. We are taking the lead on this grant, and PBS, Ohio State, Wright State, Milton Union, Franklin Monroe are all partners with us. And this current grant we're working on is called Reach. And the new grant we're working on is Reach with STEM. And it's basically, Reach was to help students learn how to read. And Reach with STEM is really working on the informational text and looking at nonfiction and looking at teaching students how to read to learn. And it's focused on second and third grade students. And so we look forward to seeing how our grant goes up against all the other grants across the state, and we'll keep you posted on that.
Sounds like we have a pretty good shot.
We hope so.
Wow.
One amusing thing, they asked where our next, asked what we're doing next with our REACH project, and I started to share that, and I got the words out. We've applied for another grant, and it's called Reach with STEM, and they all raise their hands. Okay, you can't say any more, because those are the folks that actually eventually will approve the grant. They have grant readers that take care of things, but so we weren't allowed to share any about our current grant, but it was a good presentation. So.
Super.
Item number 3, building project updates. We are closing in on the end, and Kurt, one of the few times left doing a building project update.
We are very close to being finished. We continue to track on schedule and on budget, which is obviously our goal since the beginning. Demolition for all 5 of the older buildings, Nicklin, Wilder, Favorite Hill, High Street. All those buildings are down, grass seed is planted. We're leaving the temporary fence around the sites for as long as we can to get our grass established, and also for safety of the site, and also for safety of people if they're not used to not seeing a building there, accidentally step off the sidewalk or something like that. So there are some sidewalks and curbs that also are being installed, and we're just waiting for spring. We'll remove the fence and then we'll start cutting the grass. So moving along very well. As I say on the slide, all that work will be done for the end of December, but then obviously we'll have to remove the fence in the spring. So, and then the Spring Creek parking lot, we've talked about that the last couple meetings. That is finished, and we'll be able to use that when we get back from Christmas break. So that's all in and installed, and we still have some parking stripe lines to put on, and we'll do that as weather permits. So hopefully our nice weather will hold out. And then just finally, our contractors that we're working with, Peterson doing the site work, Juergens the turn lane. There's still a few odds and ends that need to coordinate with some of the utilities to get some of that cleaned up. And then finally, Salenbean is our demolition contractor, and last time I talked to them, they shook my hand and said, nice working with you, and we'll be back later. So they're out of town, so did a nice job for us. So any questions?
To tag on to that report, if you remember, we did all the community input sessions. The one building that seemed to be fairly easy was the Bennett building, especially with the interest of the city. And if it is at the wish of the board, we are at the point where I would suggest we start looking at working with Chris Schmeezing and Gary Huff with that Bennett property at a potential transfer. If that's agreeable to the board, we'll start that work. We have not really started anything, except I did reach out to Chris and say I was going to mention at the board meeting tonight to see if that is the interest of the board. If it is, then we'll start looking into basically what the city's interest is and how we could potentially transfer that, similar to the way that they did the hospital site to us. And so if you're interested in that, Kurt and Jeremy and myself will start working with the city on that process. No decision at this point, but just getting the groundwork laid.
During your community discussions, was that shared that that was the direction, and what was the feedback you were getting?
That was pretty positive from the
Okay.
standpoint of, I think there's good interest, and some of the other board members were at those meetings. Good interest. They like the fact that it's going into the hands potentially of someone that's long-term investment, which the city is. And so, plus the city has been doing studies for quite a few years on how to redevelop the river corridor, and the Bennett property blends well into that potential redevelopment.
Just wanted to make sure there wasn't any public dissent on that
We did not.
direction.
Did any of you hear any that were at the meetings now?
Super.
Okay. We'll start that process, and again, not asking for a decision or anything, just we need to start that groundwork and get everything together and travel through that here in the next month or two. So, okay, great. Item number 4, December.
Thank you, Kurt.
Oh, thank you, Kurt. Item number 4, December 2015 enrollment. Any questions on enrollment? Okay. Item number 5, Backpack Express makeover. If you keep in mind, Backpack Express is the communication piece that we share that go home with students. And basically, the new version is up on the screen, and it is turning into a 4-page. 3 of the pages will be the same. Excuse me, yeah, I said that right. 3 of the pages will be the same. And the 3rd page will be specific to the building. So there's actually 5 versions of this. There will be a printed copy. This first edition will go home Thursday of this week. We also have the digital version that I love the fact that it does sound like a page turning. And we'll have that out on the website. And so that's the newest version of Backpack Express that we're working on. And like I said, we'll be going home with students on Thursday of this week before Christmas break. And I'll get copies. Actually, I put copies in the board update for you. Under other, just a few things. I want to read to you because sometimes we forget how blessed we are with facilities. I received this thank you note from Coldwater Schools. It says, "Dear Superintendent Haynes, on behalf of Coldwater High School, I would like to thank your district for hosting the regional games at Alexander Stadium on November 13th and 20th. Pickwa's facilities are second to none. The staff and crew were very cordial and provided help at all times." I like this next statement. "Having coached in 60-some playoff games over the years, we have experienced quality facilities and staff. However, Pickwa provides the highest standard. We truly want to thank you for a great experience for our students, athletes, cheerleaders, coaches, and fans. And sincerely, Thad Forsteffel, assistant football coach at Coldwater." And I scanned this and sent it to Chip and asked him to get it out to all the workers and everyone that participated in playoff games. It's just nice to get things like this, and Coldwater was very successful this year, and great to get this. So,
Thank you for sharing.
the last thing, we had a very successful senior citizens breakfast. Over 150 senior citizens. It worked extremely well at Pickwa Central Intermediate School. And I thank all the senior citizens who came. Also, a thank you to Unity National Bank, who sponsored the event this year. So they were our lead sponsor. A thank you to all of our students who participated in providing entertainment. And also a thank you to the administrative team and some of the teaching staff for helping to serve and helping the morning go extremely well. So a great senior citizens breakfast that went on December 6th. And that's it for superintendent's report.
Okay. Let's move on to the agenda then, please.
Number 1, recommend board approval of the attached grants. Just a thank you to McDonald's, a thank you to the Miami County Foundation, and also the Pickwa Community Foundation. And also a huge thank you to our teachers for applying for those grants. Item number 2, recommend board approval of the student survey to be used with 10 to 15 PHS students by Ohio State University student for a capstone project. This is one of our alumni. And just a reminder, any student survey has to be approved by the Board of Education. And this is a very specific, it's called the Wellness Project. Women's Empowerment, Leadership, and Love is an initiative through Pickwa High School created to provide growth opportunities for future female leaders at Pickwa High School. And fairly short survey. And I know Mr. Lyons and the guidance department is fully aware of this, and we'll be working with our alumni at Ohio State to conduct this and also potentially do some things in the spring with the results of this survey. And then that takes care of the superintendent. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 3, thank you. The Science Olympiad team is headed to Indianapolis on January 9th, which is why we wanted to get this on tonight's agenda. Basically, it is not an overnighter. It is a one-day event, but it's out of state, and that's why it needs to be approved by the Board of Education. And that's it for superintendent's agenda.
I'll entertain a motion, please, to approve the superintendent's agenda as
So
presented.
move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any further questions or discussion on these items? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Looby?
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye. She didn't call you Mrs. Let's move on to the personnel agenda.
And on personnel agenda, I recommend it be approved as it is written.
Thank you. Had the opportunity to review these hires and leave requests and resignations. Entertain a motion, please, to approve the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Hold on. Wait a minute. It didn't say. My last one didn't say it. I'm not sure what's going on. See, it's not here. Yeah, it's person.
So the personnel consent agenda has been, we have a motion to approve. Can we, Mr. Height, move to approve the personnel agenda, and who seconded? Mr. Gregerson? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on any of these items?
I just want to thank Mr. Lyons, superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and how they handled a difficult situation the last couple of weeks. I think it's been handled very professionally in the Piqua Police Department also. And a very unfortunate situation, but it was handled well.
There's nothing further. Please call the roll.
Mr. Patrizio?
Aye.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Looby?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye. Under old business, Mr. Haynes, you have an update for us on the track renovation and replacement project.
Basically, and you've seen the sample several times now, with recommendation from our athletic director, we are looking at the BSS 1000 with a Hobart texture for our track replacement. If you remember, the Hobart texture basically keeps the little pellets from coming off.
That's what I was just,
This is a texture without, or this is a sample without the Hobart.
is that what the...
That is with the
Okay.
Hobart. And if you sit and you rub, you cannot get that off. Whereas if you rub this one, you can. The next grade up is called the BSS 2000, which we looked at also. In talking to the company and also looking at prices, the company feels, and we are in agreement with our recommendation that basically we're okay with the BSS 1000 with the Hobart texture. The track itself, and I put in the content for you, looking at a red track. The passing lanes will be blue. So it blends well with our stadium. Also, we did get a bid in for traditional asphalt and have decided not to recommend that. Our predecessors did a phenomenal job back in the 80s and built a track that has lasted many, many decades. And we appreciate that, and our goal is to recommend something that is going to be lasting as long. And so we're looking at that recommendation of BSS 1000 with the Hobart texture. As far as funding, just a reminder, we are looking at utilizing the marketing dollars that we receive from Premier. And we're also looking at using permanent improvement funding for the remainder. And so you have a copy of the bid, and we are making that recommendation that we move into agreement and approve the bid for the track renovation. It's approving the bid for the track by Field Turf Binion based upon the Association of Educational Purchasing Agencies, cooperative purchasing pricing. And just keep in mind, we're used to calling it the EPC, which is the Southwest consortium that we belong to for purchasing. There's also a state consortium, and there's also a national consortium. All of the processes as far as bidding, advertising, and going through all legal has been done through both that national and our state organization. And so everything is in line for this bid to be accepted. And so we are making that recommendation. And again, this is coming from our athletic director, along with our business manager, along with your treasurer and superintendent with this recommendation.
You need a motion for
That would be great.
a motion that we approve option 2, which is BSS 1000, and the alternate 2.
Yes.
Is that correct? And add the alternate 2.
And the alternate is the Hobart coating.
Second. Any further questions
Now,
or
will
discussion?
this give us a possibility of hosting spring track tournaments?
Yes. Yes. And our goal is to not only host our own track meets, but also basically get back in line for being able to host some of the league meets, and also back in line for potentially hosting district and regionals.
And time frame on this groundbreaking would be spring?
We are looking at working with Binion to line it up with maybe doing some things before graduation in preparation. But keep in mind, with graduation at the stadium, we would be starting the next Monday after graduation with the goal of having it finished by the first week of August. And at this point,
Wow.
we are first on Binion's list. They have 2 other school districts in queue behind us, and that's why we're making this recommendation for tonight. And
Okay.
we've been working on this for quite a
Yes.
long time, so.
Hearing no further discussion or questions, please call the roll.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Luby?
Aye.
Mr. Patricio?
Aye.
And Mrs. Webster?
Aye, motion carries. Congratulations, Piqua High School and community. New track coming. Something further on the Spring Creek parking lot?
No.
Okay. And the softball and baseball proposal for the junior high school?
Same proposal that has been presented the last 2 months, and we would appreciate, as we mentioned last month, a vote on this tonight, and that's what we have also promised our league.
Okay.
So moved.
Second?
No motion on this one.
Yes.
I can't do it. So
Mr. Patrizio made the motion and Mr. Luby seconded. Did anyone want to review that? Basically, it's taking the junior high baseball and softball teams from club to into the
Would you like
GWAC.
Chip, do that real quick.
Okay, super. Thank you.
This is what we discussed at the last meeting, that at this point, junior high softball and junior high baseball has been club level, which means that there has been really no pay to play. It's been all volunteer by the coaches, and it's just kind of been trying to organize parents and those type of things. It's been a little bit of a challenge on an organizational perspective, transportation, and also in working with getting uniforms on a regular basis. So what this will do will put us in line with our other sports like volleyball, basketball, football, and move us into interscholastically. We'll be in the same league. We'll just be a little bit more organized, and we'll be able to put those in the same template universally as our other sports at the junior high level.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. No further questions or discussion. Can you call the roll?
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Luby?
Aye.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye. Thank you. Under new business, gentlemen, are we prepared to review potential board dates for, are you prepared to review 2016 dates for the meetings of the Board of Education? Mr. Bostic, you have your calendar ready too? All right.
And in choosing these, we try to look at what we have accomplished in the past, which is staying away from spring breaks, also staying away from Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
So we have that list here. That's under executive content. Do you want me to read those, or do you want to read them, or?
Actually, we don't need
Any
a vote
appro-
tonight.
okay.
This is more for
Getting that out
all
so
of
that-
you to take a look at these. So at the organizational meeting, it's not a surprise that these are potential dates. So if the 5 of you would look at these dates, if there's any conflict, if you can let me know, and then we'll get it out to other board members, and if we need to make some adjustments, we can. I'd love to move into the organizational meeting, though, with here are the proposed dates, and everyone's calendars are clear.
This will also give the building principals an opportunity to review the activity calendar as well, so that we don't have a
Correct.
basketball game and a school board meeting on the same night. Sit and smell popcorn.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item 2, which is to appoint a president pro tem for the January 6th organizational meeting, which will be held at 4 o'clock at the Board of Education office. Gentlemen, do I have a volunteer, or would someone like to volunteer someone? Mr. Luby's kind of nodded his head a little bit. I think, has he
I was
handled it?
actually coughing.
You've handled that in the past for the board, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I think, didn't we usually go to the former past president?
Yeah,
Mr. Height,
Yeah.
you want to?
I can do it.
That is an item that does require action,
moved.
so I think Bob motioned and
Second.
You guys are
Frank.
ahead of me here.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
Let me formalize that again. Mr. Luby made the motion and Mr. Patrizio seconded. I don't think there will be any further discussion or questioning of that item, so whenever you're ready, you may call the roll.
Mr. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson?
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio?
Aye.
Mr. Luby?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Sure.
With a smile.
I also do not have any requests for, from here, all right, hearing of the public regarding non-agenda items. So at this time, I'm going to thank the administrators for putting their reports together again for us. It's interesting to see and read what's going on in each of the buildings. In fact, it reminded me I owed Mr. Haynes some pictures from what went on at Washington a couple of weeks ago, or last week. I would like to remind you again that the organizational meeting will be on the 6th at 4 at the board office, and that will wrap up the regular portion of this meeting. The board will go back into executive session to continue the evaluation of the superintendent. You want another motion for that as well? Okay.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded by Mr. Height and Mr. Luby. We do not anticipate taking any action after we conclude our executive session, which I've been promised will be held to 30 minutes, Sarah. So
30 minutes?
30 minutes or less. So we are ready to roll. Thank you all for being here this evening, and for the folks who tuned in to have a look at what's going on in the district. Wish you happy holidays. And to my fellow board members and the administrators of the district, best wishes.